The last time this gentleman was on our show was just a little while before the COVID lockdown. And there, yeah, he's grinning. He's grinning. If you're watching on YouTube, he's back. Steve Yellin, so good to see you. How are you?
Mark, it's so good to see you. Thanks for having me back, and I'm doing very well. Thank you.
I'm so glad you reached out. And I'm going to kick it off with this because Steve focuses, he's foremost in the field of basically performance psychology and coaching and such. And you've written books, but there you've just sent me a little tease on the one you're busy with right now.
Yes,
And
sir. Yes, sir.
I'm gonna read you a quote, right? And I'm gonna let you just go. I'm gonna say to you, okay, I'm the jockey, you're the thoroughbred. I'm giving you a
Okay.
light rein. Okay, so you're ready for the brief here.
I got it. Okay, I'm ready.
All right. This is Tiger Woods, and it's a quote right at the start of a book that you're working on called The Science of Silence.
Yes.
Here's the quote. There have been key shots in major tournaments where I took the club out of the bag and I did not remember anything until I saw the ball in the air. Okay. Now, we have an informed audience globally that's on the Mark podcast.
Yes.
The most informed. And we are purveyors of swing theory and swing thoughts and how to's and how not to's and such. But here's arguably the greatest of all time saying, I took the club out the bag and basically I blacked out until I saw the ball in the air. Off you go.
So this is, when someone reads this quote for the first time, it's a little confusing because it's counterintuitive.
Mm-hmm.
It really goes against what you watch when you see Tiger play, because you thought what separated Tiger from the field, and in a way it does, but in a deeper way actually, is his focus,
Mm-hmm.
his concentration, his determination, his will to win, almost like being a tiger tracking his prey.
Yeah.
And then he comes out with this quote. Now, we're talking about the back nine on Sunday at Augusta, or the back nine at the US Open when he's trying to make history, where you would think that he would be super focused and remember everything, okay? And he has gone, it's not he has gone, he experiences 180 degrees. So that opens up a whole new field in performance psychology. And by the way, Mark, I'm not a psychologist in any stretch of the imagination. I've never even read a book on sports psychology. I consider myself a fluid motion factor instructor. I teach athletes in many different sports how to generate fluid motion. So, I love this quote. I think it's the quintessential zone experience quote. And I love this quote so much that I decided to write a book explaining this from many different angles, but especially from the angle of neurophysiology, because there's a very specific neurophysiological experience that someone has that allows them to have that experience. And when they do have that experience, they are in the zone and they're ready for action.
They truly are. But isn't it curious? I mean, how you dub yourself. But I would say of all the great golfers I've been around, not just great golfers, all golfers who work with some sort of sports psychologist, the work they're doing is to be able to get to that quiet mind time, that flow, that zone state that you coach people to get into.
Yes, that is true. Okay. And if a sports psychologist is successful, and there's a lot of good ones out there, what they've done is they've set up the conditions for that golfer to experience very specific processes in their mind. Mm-hmm. Now, they may set up the circumstances where it's self-belief, where it's handling your emotions, whether it's self-confidence. But when the rubber meets the road, it's not beliefs or self-confidence that hits the ball. It's very specific processes in the brain physiology. And I was fortunate enough about 15 years ago to work with one of the top sports neuroscientists in the world, Dr. Fred Travis, mm-hmm. who worked with two Olympic teams, winter teams, Norway and Denmark, the two top Olympic teams in the world, actually. And every summer, when I was taking my summer vacation, we got to be very good friends, and we would discuss one subject extensively, one subject only.
Mhm.
How is fluid motion produced in the brain physiology, and why does it break down? And then I worked with David Ledbetter at his academy in Orlando for 5 years, and I would sort of smooth out my program and go through many reiterations where I would set up the conditions that mirror what the brain physiology has to experience. So the sports psychologists, okay, which are very valuable to a lot of people, they don't realize, or maybe they do if they know neurophysiology, but I haven't really run into one that knows it on the depth of this level,
Mhm.
is they're pressing the right buttons in that person
Yeah.
to allow them essentially to experience deeper levels of silence during that 1.5 seconds it takes to generate a golf swing.
Incredible. I zipped through the book. Well, what is it's a manuscript right now. It's not the book just yet, I guess. And was easy reading for something that was, I hesitate to say as in depth as what it is because of the neurophysiology, and you describe, how the brain works with the cerebellum and that sort of stuff. And you made a statement that I want to kind of mine a little bit, Steve.
Sure.
And you said the quality of your silence during your swing is what determines how you play. And then you drew the anecdote to, you were like, look, you've had a fine warm up, and all of a sudden you get to the golf course and you can't hit it,
Right.
or you're practicing and you hit 3 shots flush, and all of a
Right.
sudden you mishit a few, and you're like,
Right.
what on earth
Right.
happened? So,
Right.
because that's when the brain gets noisy for me and for
Very.
many watching this. So
Yes.
please help us.
Yes. So you have to understand, you have to go to the motherboard of the swing.
Okay.
The swing does not control the swing. Just because you have an intention to hit a high cut or a low fade or a draw or a punch shot or a flop shot does not necessarily mean you're going to execute it. So you have to ask yourself a question. It's a very, very basic question, Mark. How do you turn intention into execution? How do you transform? You have an intention to hit the fairway, to hit the green, to make the putt, to make the cut, to win the tournament, whatever. So what are the dynamics of transformation that allow you to do that? And those dynamics have not really been thoroughly discussed at all, okay? At all, correct? And the dynamics are simple. I'll explain what the one process is you have to experience. You have to. This is science. This is not philosophy or interpretation. So to generate emotion, any motion, you have to have an intention. You have to generate an intention in the brain physiology. I'm going to take the club back, because if you don't have that intention, the club's not going to move. And there's two parts of the brain that are really crucial in producing fluid motion, though the whole brain physiology is involved, but let's just focus on these two parts. One is the prefrontal cortex, which is in the front of the frontal part of the brain. It's the discriminating intellect. It's called the CEO of the brain because it oversees all processes in the brain. And the other is the motor system. Now, when you, Mark Immelman, had that career shot, that career round, that career tournament, for the most part, every time you swung at the ball, that signal bypassed the prefrontal cortex, which means the intellect went offline.
Hmm.
The intellect went offline. Now, you're shaking your head because you can remember. And the signal went right to the motor system, and it's the motor system which communicates with the body. So we're looking at the motherboard of the swing. The motherboard of the swing is not how you take the club back, how you set it, what your angle of attack. That's all 100% a byproduct of the processes in the brain physiology that are transferring that information from the mind to the body. Now, if that's being the case, we're looking at the motherboard of the swing. These lights flickering?
Yeah, they're a little bit. It adds to the mood, though. No, you're good.
Okay, that's fine. It's a little, psychedelic. Okay.
Right.
So what prevents the signal from moving to the motor system seamlessly? Okay. What prevents it? It's when the intellect goes online, when you start thinking.
When the CEO tries to take over.
When the CEO starts to micromanage, okay? You can't micromanage something that's going 100, 105 miles an hour. Good luck, okay? It ain't going to happen. So how do you keep the PFC from going online? There's only one way, Mark. It's the same for me. It's the same for you. It's the same. It was the same for Michael Jordan, all the great athletes. It's the same for Scotty Scheffler. Everybody, doesn't matter. You have to have a threshold level of silence.
Mm-hmm.
The mind has to be quiet. And this is one of the main reasons, okay, that Scotty is playing so well. It's one of the main reasons why Rory has played in 40 major tournaments and has not won in 10 years. The PFC goes online.
Mm-hmm.
That signal is being delayed. And when that signal is delayed, there's a flow of information between the mind and the body. You can look at it like an autobahn, like a road. And when that flow is interrupted, then in the middle of the swing, usually in the transformation, in the when you're going from up to down, okay,
Mm-hmm.
in the transition, okay, that's when you go into crisis management, when you do not have that flow of intelligence into the brain physiology. Because and again, this is happening in microseconds. We're really dissecting a swing. The body doesn't know what to do because it's not getting direction. That flow, it's like you have a roadblock. There's a roadblock there. So what happens? You almost go into a spastic mode because the body doesn't really know what to do. So anything could happen. You could become too shallow. You could become too steep. You can leave it open. You can be off balance. There's a million things, not a million, but there's a plethora of things that could happen that are just not good, no bueno.
So many questions, and I'm trying to navigate this conversation here and
Sure.
and learn. I'm looking at my notes here as because when I was reading, there were all these statements that were jumping out at me, and I wanted to, really dig into these. And
Yeah.
you touched on the one you said, remember the swing does not control the swing. Processes in the mind control the swing.
Correct.
And you wrote two. You talked about the cerebellum and how
Correct.
it will determine how far you go in the game.
100%.
And yeah, here's me. Now, I'm an aspirant golfer, and I read that. I'm like, I want to go far in the game. So clearly, I've got to control the cerebellum. And then I read further, and then I read about wholeness and practicing movement and this sort of thing. Help us a little bit here, because what you say is so sensical. But how? How do we get the stillness to be able to allow that brain-body connection to not be blocked?
So first of all, it's not, did you say nonsensical? Did you use the word nonsensical?
Sensible. I'm guessing.
Oh, sensible. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So here's the thing, all right? If you have a car, you have a Ferrari, and you don't understand how the Ferrari should be tuned, okay? You don't understand, you don't have an owner's manual. So some days it runs well, and some days it doesn't run well. So you have to go back to the main thrust, which is completely neurophysiological. Mark, the swing doesn't control the swing. There are processes. You have a machine, okay? And the machine, if it's working properly, you're going to get the right results. So you have to think of the brain physiology as a machine, and the byproduct of the correct working of that machine is you're going to have a repeatable fluid swing. Now, when anyone swings, there's one of two processes that are going to control the swing and are going to result in either a good shot or a bad shot. And that's either the intellect is going to try to micromanage it, or the cerebellum, which does two things. Now,
you called it the magic cerebellum in the book.
It's the magic cerebellum. Now, you tell me if these are important, okay, in a golf swing. One, it's able to self-correct the swing. Meaning, if you have a groove motion, and of course, we're not talking about beginners because they don't have a groove motion yet. We're talking about accomplished players that if you're at the top of the swing and it feels you've been at the top of the swing so many times and everything is right, you feel the hands are right, the club is right and everything, but this swing, you do not feel in a comfortable position. You know that if you continue the motion and you don't self-correct, disaster could happen on this swing. So the cerebellum, when the PFC is quiet, when the PFC is offline, when the mind is soaked in silence, and you know that experience, you're an accomplished golfer, the cerebellum, its duty at that point, called to duty, all right, it can self-correct the swing. meaning it can liquefy the body enough to make sure that you have an acceptable angle of attack, okay, and that you can have a square face at impact. The cerebellum also smooths out a swing. It smooths out. You can divide a swing into 2 parts, or you can divide it into 1,000,000 parts. So when you see Ernie Els or Freddie Couples or any of these silky kind of oily swings, that's the cerebellum, smoothing out. Now, you think about when someone hits a poor shot, is it smooth? No, it's rough.
Yeah.
It's jerky, okay? Can they self-correct? No. So what they do on TV is they, one of these, Biz Hub, they videotape it. Oh, look at that angle. Oh, it's too steep. Oh, it's too shallow. Oh, look at he double crossed himself or whatever. Here's the thing, Mark, it's not controversial, it's true, but it's very new and innovative, okay? That in a way, this is disruptive technology to the golf industry because it's looking at a swing when it goes bad, not on the byproduct. Let's not go to the byproduct. Let's go to the source. Let's go to the origin. Let's go to the motherboard. And I'll give you an example, okay? A guy's playing a practice round, 9-iron, misses the green, drops a ball, sticks it 3 feet. Did all of a sudden he, find his swing? No. On the first swing, the PFC was online, that signal was delayed. On the second swing, all right, whatever, okay? Imagine a golf tournament where everyone can hit a second ball. Everyone has a shot. You're going to have, how many tournaments are on the PGA schedule? 30, 40? You're going to have 30 or 40 winners. No one's going to win it twice because every person's second shot is going to be really, really good, right? Or second putt. Why? Did all of a sudden they discover their swing on the second shot? No. The motherboard, we're going always, at least I always go to the motherboard. If the motherboard is working correctly, you're going to be in good shape. And the cerebellum is the motherboard of the motherboard.
Yeah. Goodness. I'm listening to you and I'm fascinated and I'm a fan and I'm like, every golfer watching this or listening to this or any aspirant golfer, there's our higher self. And that's the word that popped into my head. And we've all had brushes. We've all had brushes with us. And then, people call it the zone. You're describing exactly what's happening physiologically.
Yes.
And then you wonder, why can't I get back there? But you essentially, with writing about silence of the mind or the stillness of the mind, you helping us to help ourselves to get there. And it's almost like taking your hands off the wheel and allowing the work that you've put in to bear fruit when it means something.
I couldn't have said it any better. Now, this whole revolution in my mind and my understanding of sports, because I didn't know all of this, okay, came when Dr. Travis told me about 15, 20 years ago. Stephen, once you've grooved a motion, and of course, we all know when a golfer has grooved a motion. You could see a groove motion when you go to the range. For sure, anyone playing on any tour in the world or mini tour has grooved their motion, grooved their swing. Once you have grooved a motion, Stephen, the motion cannot break down.
Oh, goodness.
Okay.
You know what
breaks down?
Like
I know it's mind blowing. Okay.
Yeah.
What breaks down is the ability to access what you already own. Now, this is a whole paradigm shifting understanding of golf, any sport, doesn't matter. And this explains the second shot syndrome. This explains when you can't find the fairway or the green on one round and all of a sudden you can't miss. Why? What are the dynamics? I want to go down to the buck stops here. Let's go down and understand this from the deepest level. And you can't understand it from the body, Mark. You can't, because the body is not feeding itself the intelligence of the swing. The body is reacting, completely 100% reacting to the processes in the mind that will allow you to access muscle memory, which is stored in the basal ganglia. Now, the great ones, You know, you go to the range, I don't have to tell you, you go to the range on a PGA or LPGA, who cannot win? Who cannot miss the cut? You know, 2 days later, half the field is gone. You know, the year later, you know, half of them have lost their card. What is it? It's not the swing. There comes a point in time, and you have to have, I am a great believer. You go to the best instructor, the most knowledgeable instructor of the swing, someone who has a track record, and you pay attention and you listen to everything that person says. And you practice and you practice and you practice. Because if you don't put in your time, it's good mechanics don't fall from the sky, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But there comes a point in time, and this again is controversial in a way. There comes a point in time where you have to more or less close the book on the swing, and you know you're at that place when someone asks you, this I ask all my players this, I said, if you can access your best swings now, are you going to be a happy golfer for the rest of your life? They all say yes, because I work with really good golfers.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, why are you constantly working on something that if you could access, you would be happy with? So in my mind, there's two parts a coach should have as far as skill set. One is teaching someone the correct mechanics, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the second is teaching them how to access the correct mechanics. And if it was just practice, 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 well, the person who practiced the most would win the most amount of money, and that's just not the case.
I guess the $1 million question is, how do we access said mechanics? But before I go there,
Yes.
you also made a statement that was kind of telling to me,
Yes.
where you said it was the first 2 or 3 feet of the swing.
Yes. This is very interesting.
Yeah, would sort of defines what's likely to happen. Now, you know, I'm a
Yes.
long-time golf instructor. You know this,
Yes.
and I've always been inclined, because golf is a game of projecting an object or ball toward a target while it's
Yes.
spinning. So I was always like, wherever the focus or whatever you want to call it should be going in the same direction of where I'm trying to propel the ball. But you're like, if you start to swing off correctly for the first 2 or 3 feet, it's almost bound for success. Please elaborate.
Better chance of success.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Again, this is Dr. Fred Travis saying to me that the first 2 or 3 feet of the motion are going to set in sequence whether that signal goes right to the motor system or is interrupted, which makes sense because you're initiating a motion, and well begun is half done. And if you have a threshold level of wholeness, and of course, ask me what wholeness is. You can next
It's
question.
coming. It's on my list over
Coming,
here.
all right. Then you're in good shape. And the story that comes to mind is when Nicklaus hit that 1-iron on 17 at Pebble Beach.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he said, "I'm looking for that quote."
He recorrected at the top of his
Okay,
spin.
you know, here's the thing: if you can find that exact quote, please send it to me or any of
I'll look for it. Yeah.
your viewers. Okay, he knew in immediately taking the club back that he was in trouble. And here's the thing, all right. He's taken the club back so many times, and it's only 2 or 3 feet. It's not, you know, you're not at the top and thinking you're in trouble. But his career was great because his mind was always soaked in silence, abstract. It was abstract, not concrete. Do this, he wasn't a micromanager. So because he swung at the ball so many times, he hit so many balls, he's familiar, and his mind was so quiet, so his senses are so wide awake. He was familiar with not the physical space, okay? He's familiar with the mental space that he has to be in. And when he took that club back, he was not in the right mental space. So he was concerned about the sequence of events that were going to happen. And of course, he was able to make that transition. He was able to change things at the top. And of course, the rest is history.
Yeah, hit the flagstick with a 1-iron straight into the wind and made the birdie and won the US Open. I want to get to wholeness, but you touched on it earlier, and I just want to build on this because
Yes.
I'm a firm believer in practice, but I stress purpose-driven, productive practice
Me
to
too.
build that muscle memory you speak of.
100%.
Because so many of us, and this was sort of milling around my head while you were sharing the Nicholas anecdote, where
Yes,
I'll sometimes give a lesson and someone's struggling with it, and they're just trying to hit the ball, where all of
yes.
a sudden I'll put one or other obstacle in there, and I'm like, well, just miss that. And then when they start to swing, and maybe it creates more fluidity and that oiliness you describe, but instead of like just strike ball, it's I start to swing the club through a certain area because I'm missing this instead of worrying about hitting that towards that target over there. Are you sort of understanding where I'm going with this here? Because I almost get the sense that that's when we get in this place where we allow the athlete within our higher self to swing the club through a certain area as opposed to just try and hit the golf ball.
It's an interesting question, Mark. And as you were asking it, I'm just going through it in my mind to
Mhm.
make an intelligent answer to that. Now, sometimes that's going to work, and sometimes that's not going to work.
Yeah.
Sometimes, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So a deeper question is, why does it work on this shot and it doesn't work on another shot?
Okay.
That's the question that I would ask. And it could be that what happens is that when you do it for the first time, it's very novel because they're not used to setting up those conditions, all right?
Okay. Right.
And then what happens is they start to hold on to it more. It becomes a pattern. And when it becomes a pattern, the PFC loves patterns, okay?
Okay.
But it's not going to translate. It's not going to translate into fluidity. It's just going to translate into boosting PFC's ego, which you don't want. You want to deflate it and get it offline. So one of the pitfalls when I teach this program, and everyone, first of all, everyone goes through the program exactly the same, whether they're a 10 handicap or your brother. Okay,
Mhm.
they go through it exactly the same because the brain physiology creates fluid motion for every athlete identically. Now, someone may create extraordinary fluid motion and just average fluid motion, but it's still the same dynamics. But one of the pitfalls, and there are four main pitfalls in the program, is it's a patternless pattern. This is tough because
You used abstract earlier. I see where you're going now.
okay, it's a patternless pattern, Mark, because and that's not how the mind works. That's not how our brain physiology works. That's not how we operate in the universe. We operate in the universe. We are always looking for a pattern because pattern gives us stability. Get up at the same time, same breakfast, same friends, same vacation, same everything. Okay, and that's great if you want to live a stable life. It's not great if you want to produce consistent fluid motion.
Wow.
It's not great at all because remember, Tiger didn't say, "Oh, I remember to do this and I remember this." No, he didn't remember anything. There's no pattern.
Yeah.
His mind was completely blank, and it can be blank because muscle memory doesn't break down. It's always there, or else you'd have to learn how to throw a ball, ride a bike, shoot a basketball. So when someone hears this, it's a little startling because they're used to thinking. First of all, it's innate in every human being. They want to get better. I don't want to play the same this year as last year. Okay. I don't want to have the same year for a PGA pro. I want to get better. I want to get better. So the thinking is I'm going to get better if my swing gets better. Okay. But then remember, you ask them this question. It's a very telling question with a very telling answer. If you could access your best swings on a consistent basis, are you going to be a happy golfer at the end of the day? Yes. Okay. So then you have to ask yourself the question, and we can go to practice if you want. What's the purpose of practice if the muscle memory is always there? This is a very interesting question.
All right.
Now, the purpose of practice when someone's learning golf or they're making a major change in golf, okay, that's a whole different ball game, okay? But once they have a good enough swing that if they could access, they would be happy at the end of the day. And I guarantee you, you go to any PGA tournament, any Corn Ferry, any Epson, any LPGA, any LET, and
Mhm.
you ask them if you could access what you already own on a regular basis, would you be? They would all say yes, guaranteed. So then you go into, well, what's the purpose of practice? How about this? Okay. How about practicing how to access what I already own?
Mhm. Okay. This is where wholeness comes in, I'm assuming. Yeah.
This is, yes, what
Right.
you're practicing
Uh-huh.
is setting up the subtle conditions in the brain physiology. And they're very subtle, because if they weren't subtle, once you do it one round, you're going to do it for the rest of your life, okay? To make that your default state. Because in order to play consistent elite championship, major championship PGA winner golf, you have to have those subtle, you have to have access to those subtle processes. So when I teach someone, I give them this practice routine, and they're all on board with it, Mark. Anyone who's gone through my program, okay, they know, and very quickly, because I can set up these conditions very quickly, they know they have to be in that space, because that's the space they were in when they played their best. Only they didn't really know how to get there, how to stay there, and when it left, for sure, they had no idea how to get it back.
This is fascinating to me because I sort of sense an excitement within as I hear you talk about this. And I know all of the fans listening are getting the same thing. And the best analogy I could draw was I'm partnered with a company called NeuroPeak. And they designed this belt that you wear that basically helps you breathe precisely.
Beautiful.
And as you breathe well, your body goes into balance.
Right.
Your nervous system balances. So there's not all stress from the sympathetic. And I remember, so they said, we want you to do this post where you wear the belt and then you hit a shot.
Yes.
And you get a number on there. It's called the balance number. It goes from 0 to 100, with 100 being very balanced. It's green. Then you get like yellow and red, kind of like traffic lights. And I remember standing behind the shot. I'd picked a difficult tee shot, one that was always in my head. And I could see I was a little in the yellow. Then I did the precision breathing, and I could see the number go up into the green. So I was less stressed, more balanced.
Yes.
Stepped into the ball, over the ball, and I started to, it was being recorded. That number started waning. And when I made the swing, it was into the red. And so I remember thinking,
Right.
okay, well, apparently I'm not breathing as well during the swing process.
Right.
And I'm like, golly, this is hard. Now
Yeah.
I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm like,
Yeah.
golly, this is cool, but this is going to be really hard.
No,
Okay.
it's so simple, Mark, you won't believe it.
Well, help
If
me.
you will not believe it.
Okay,
I'm
go.
telling you, I blow people's minds,
All right.
really good players' minds. And if I was at, where are you located?
Columbus, Georgia. Help me be whole. Help our listeners understand wholeness in this.
Here's the thing, okay? I would love to work with you on the range, okay?
Mm-hmm.
To give you that experience, and you would see how simple it is. But it's delicately simple, okay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's delicately simple, because when you set a thermostat to 72 degrees, you don't have to worry if the temperature is going to go 72. It's going to go 72. So I set the brain physiology to a certain level, and it's immediate, whether you believe it. Okay, Stephen, you know, I read your book. I just can't believe it. I said, well, that's fine. Okay, let's give me 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes on the range, and let's see what you experience. Because when you do set up this space, it's instantaneous. It's absolutely within 2 or 3 balls. You are saying, really, it's that simple.
I'm seeing what you're saying, because week in and week out when I'm on the tour, you see certain golfers, like what pops to mind a few times during this conversation is Bruce Litzky. Now,
Right.
okay, well, now for the folks who don't know, Litzky played periodically. The stories are rampant that he'd go home, wouldn't even touch a club.
Go fishing.
Go fishing, come back and win tournaments. And he never looked like he was handcuffed by technique. And then on the other side of that, I would say I watch certain golfers, like when they're really in the midst of it, where it doesn't look like it's not like there's a fear of failure, but there's no concern with what might happen. It's like they exactly. They am absolutely immersed in what they're doing. They just rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. And whenever the ball ends, they go and do the same thing. And there's never like, oh my God, what's going on kind of deal.
No drama.
Yeah.
No drama.
So that's the stillness in the mind.
You can answer that, okay? Absolutely, okay? Because that's the only way to repeat the motion. You know, if you practice, if you had to recreate the swing, let's say there was no muscle memory, okay? Which is, I mean, ridiculous to say, but let's say there was no muscle memory. Then you have to live in checklist city. You have to recreate the swing. You have to make sure you're taking it back and setting it, et cetera, at the top, making sure the club is squared impact. But that's not the case. So, I watched Scotty Scheffler, who's, just having phenomenal years, and
Yeah.
he's like walking in the park,
Yep.
okay? And you see these other guys, and they're like drama queens, because here's another thing, very important element. Attention and focus does not equate to execution. This is a big one. Attention and focus does not equate to execution. Silence, wholeness, abstraction equates to execution. That's why Tiger said what he did. So, I remember watching Rory on was it 16 at the last US
US
Open?
Open. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And he looked up 7 times before he pulled the trigger. Okay, 7 times, looking
Mhm.
up, looking up. Every time he looked up, he broke wholeness a little bit more. He gets to the 9th hole mark, he looked up 9 times. 9 times. All he had to do was par the hole, and he gets in a playoff. So what that looking up, you're over the ball, you look. You're over the ball, you look. Every time you look, you're just pushing the PFC online more because you're focusing. You keep focusing. You keep focusing. And once you do that, you have inputted so many processes in the brain physiology that during the motion, the brain physiology doesn't know which process that it should listen to because you've got 9 or 10 there, and the PFC is online, the cerebellum is offline, and there's not a flow of intelligence between the mind and the body.
Mm. You know what? I could have you forever. And everyone's wanting to go, well, okay, we're clearly got to get the book or work with Steve. Before I ask you to tell us about the other books you've written and where folks can find them and you,
Yes.
So as far as this podcast goes, your book that's coming out, you've written a couple. It's called The Science of Silence because it is scientific.
You like that name?
Very much. And then it's this crazy sort of blend between the abstract of the
Yeah.
silent and then the concrete of the science.
Yes. Yes.
But if you were to sort of leave the audience with a parting shot or the marching orders, not that they say, come work with me, and you said to them, okay, off you go, but take this with you. What
Yes.
would that be?
It would be one thing.
Mhm.
Okay. It would be first understanding that the quality of the space before you initiate the motion is more or less going to determine the motion. That quality of space immediately preceding you initiating a motion will more or less determine the quality of the swing. So how can you know whether you're in that right space? Okay. What practical technique? Because I give techniques. This is not a philosophy. I don't try to convince it. I say, do this, do this, do that. You don't have to buy in. Just follow my instruction. Okay. Because I never try to convince anybody of this program. They have to convince themselves, and they only convince it based on experience. So here's what I would leave your audience with, okay? To know whether you have that silence, that wholeness, that abstraction before you pull the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to practice this before you, take it to the course, is that right before, simulate on the range that you're playing in a round, this is an important shot, get over the ball, and then right before you're about to pull the trigger, you drop the club and you stand up. And you stand up like you're in your living room and you ask yourself this question: do my shoulders feel the same way now as when I had the club in my hand and I was about to initiate a swing? No, not even close. Okay.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, not even close, because you're equating focus and living in checklist city and determination and concentration with executing a shot. You're going 180 degrees the wrong way. So, you have to do this 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 times without swinging before, when you stand up, you have a baseline that, yes, my shoulders felt when I had the club in my hand exactly the way they feel now, like I'm standing in my living room. Then and only then are you ready to hit a ball. Because once you initiate the swing, that ship has left the port. It's too late, baby. So you better make sure it's heading in the right direction.
Okay, great. I'm going to go and try that as soon as we're done with this call. But I got
Text
okay,
me and let me know.
But yes, I'm going to ask you a mechanical question about it.
Yes,
I absolutely understand that oiliness, to use your term, the
yes,
fluid, the fluidity of the
yes,
stiffness of the shoulders and the arms, the
yes,
tension-free environment.
yes. Good.
That is again kind of abstract and in opposition to, I'm sure, the legs and the core, which are kind of awake and stabilizes, or is the
Yes,
entire body in this kind of like
yes,
fluid zone.
yes.
Okay.
What's your question?
So the fluid, the soft area is just the shoulders. So when I stand up, I'm still engaged in my legs and such. It's just this area, the swinging mechanism that's soft.
What it is that if you stand up and your shoulders feel different, and most people when they stand up, they feel, "Oh, I don't feel like this over the ball."
Mm-hmm.
What that indicates is you are over anticipating an action that has not yet occurred. You're over anticipating an action that has not yet occurred.
Mm-hmm.
And that over anticipation means that the PFC is online. So there has to be some tension in your body. And
Gotcha.
it starts in the shoulders, because if you're just relax your shoulders now and you'll see you're immediately in the present. Okay. Tense your shoulders and either time is frozen or you're anticipating something that hasn't happened.
Mm-hmm.
So there's and ultimately in the final analysis, it's the experience of time that controls the muscles. So if you're over that ball and you're anticipating how you're going to take it back, how you're going to make the transition, how is the shot going to result? What's the result of the shot? Am I going to make? So you're in the future, okay? And once you're in the future, that flow of intelligence between the mind and the body, Mark, it's like a rubber hose with water. Remember when you pinch the hose and the water doesn't come out on the other side? That's what it's like.
I'm smiling because I know everyone after this is going to go and try that as soon as they've
Now,
clicked.
I charge a lot of money to tell someone that, okay? But for you,
We
okay,
got it for free.
and
Listen,
your audience.
yeah, and the audience. Now, okay, the books. You've got Fluid Motion Factor. You've got the 7 Secrets of World-Class
Right,
Athletes.
right.
Share with the folks where they can find those before the
Okay.
Science of Silence comes out.
Yeah, they need to buy Simplicity. That's the only book they need to buy.
Simplicity.
And you can get it at Simplicity. You get it on Amazon, all
All right.
right? And that gives out the whole program. Now, there's 3 ways to learn the program. One is to buy the book. 2 is to go to my website and buy the videos. It's 2.5-hour video.
What's the web address?
It's Stephen Yellin,
Mm-hmm.
YELLIN.com, StephenYellin.com.
Okay.
And the third way, if you really want to take, the royal path, is to come and see me in Vero Beach. I teach in Vero Beach, beautiful, beautiful, one of the best munis in the country, Sandridge, 2 magnificent 18-hole courses and a great teaching range. And in person is unlike any, I don't have to tell you, okay? It's a completely different experience because I could see your body language. I have to see your body language.
Mm-hmm.
I have to see how you're walking into the ball. I have to see your body language over the ball. And then I take you to the course and I have to see what's going on when you only get one ball.
Gotcha.
It will completely change your career in golf if you come and see me.
Well, look, I'm thankful that you would come on and kind of give us drop some breadcrumbs and some nuggets along the way. Steve, as always, tremendous stuff. Thank you so much for joining us, and I really look forward to this one. As I say, you've teased me just enough. I got to the end of it. I'm like, okay, what next? So I'm
Did
looking
you,
forward to the.
I'd like your, I send it out to a few people, you being one of them. I'd like your opinion. Is it intriguing? Does it bring you in?
Yeah, it does absolutely because like you speak of abstract and contrast. There's the contrast behind just an easy quote, and all of a sudden you hit me with some neuroscience and stuff, and then you work your way back out to wholeness, and it's like I feel it's holistic. I guess is the best way I would talk about
Good,
it.
good. Well, I don't want to put I don't want to put the readers to sleep. Okay.
No sleeping here because here's the thing. Everything you described right at the top, I've lived. When
Yes.
people read the book, they'll be like, I've been there. I've
Yeah,
hit 4 shots flush in a row, and all of a sudden I hit the heck out of the toe, and I don't know like what's happened.
exactly.
Yeah, it's
I
so
think we've all been there.
it's this conundrum, and you're at the forefront of this revolution to shine a bright light on it. So thank you for coming to share it with us.
Thank you, Mark. This was a real, real joy for me. Appreciate it.